Welcome back. So today we're going to continue with lesson 4.3 in terms of working with and making dialog boxes. We'll talk about three different kind of dialog boxes. We'll talk about how to use the alert dialog. We'll also talk about how to use the date picker as well as the time picker dialogs. So we're going to continue working with the Droid Cafe project. And so we're going to make a few additions to the cart page or the order page. So down on the bottom, we already have a way to enter a delivery method using radio buttons. We'll also add fields for entering a delivery date and a delivery time using the date and time pickers. And then finally, we'll add an alert dialog to the buy button saying, are you sure you want to purchase this or not? So those are the kind of things that we're going to cover here. Doing a little bit of testing with this app, I've noticed that if I immediately come in here and click the buy button, that the app then crashes. As it turns out, the problem here is our hide keyboard function, in the sense that it's assuming that something has focus. So we do need to check that, and so there's a few different ways to deal with that. One way is to say pass the view in here. So for instance, I could pass a particular view in. The other thing I can do is say, well, we're going to use the current focus, but I just need to check that something is focused before proceeding. So in here I might say view is equal to get current focus, and then if there is a view that has focus, that's where I will proceed to hide the keyboard. So if nothing has focus, we're just going to assume that the keyboard is already hidden. So making those changes will stop the app from crashing when I press the buy button. Here. There we go. So this appears. All right, so that bug is fixed. Next thing I want to do is go up to where we buy, which is here in on buy. Okay, so in on buy, we hide the keyboard, which was that first problem, which we just resolved. And then we build up this receipt, which we're finally going to show in a toast. So what I'm going to do is open this up in alert dialog instead, where they can either confirm or reject the purchase. To do so, I'm going to use the alert dialog builder class, which is a standard way of building up standardized dialogs rather than having to create a custom UI for things like this. So first thing I need to do is create that builder. So I'm going to say alert dialog dot builder. Call this builder. And I'm going to say that equals new alert dialog builder. I need to provide it a bit of a context to work with here. So my context is going to be this. And then next, so we'll set the title to purchase. Set the message on the dialog to click OK to confirm the purchase, or cancel to abort. Okay, so that's what the title and the message will be there. The next thing I need to do is tell it what to do when you click OK or cancel. So in here, I will also add builder.set positive button. So this is the text and the handler for when you click on that button. So here I'm going to put OK as the text that will appear. And I will put a new on-click listener, which will respond to when you click that button. All right, so in here, we want to say if they click the positive, then I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to show a toast, and that toast is going to say that they have confirmed the purchase. show. And then we're also going to send them back to the main activity. And that's pretty simple in terms of what we need to do there. We just say finish, which will close the current activity. In terms of the negative button or the cancel button, I'm going to call builder.setNegativeButton. And so we'll set the text of that to cancel. And we need a click listener for that one as well. And so here I can make another toast, and I might say canceled. Now, we'll notice in this context that I need to clarify what this is. So this is where I need to say main activity.this instead. I also need to say main activity.this in this context as well. Oh, no, sorry. This is not main activity because I'm not in main activity. This is order activity.this. Order activity.this. Okay. So now that I've kind of configured the dialog, I need to actually show it. So to do that, I'm going to say builder.show. So with all those things in place, when I run and I click the purchase button, I should see that dialog appear. There we go. So rather than showing a toast, it's going to pop up with this. Now, I am missing something in here in the sense that I wanted to actually have the receipt in there. So I do need to add that in here. Okay, so in here, I want to do /n. And so actually, I want to add this to the receipt. .append. There we go. So I'm going to add that in there, and then instead in set message, I'm going to say, let's put the receipt. There we go. So the receipt, all the information that's on that appears here, and then there is an OK or cancel. If I hit cancel, I should see a toast here canceled. If I hit OK, it's going to say confirmed and send me back to there. So that's the basics of what you need to set up an alert dialog. Just a matter of using the alert builder. Generally set title and set message to show the user some information. And then finally set positive and set negative to respond to those OK and cancel buttons. So you can see the title appears up here, and this is where the text appears. So if I were to fill in all the information, because we don't have any validation logic on there right now, so it's doing it regardless of whether or not everything's filled in. I could say 1, 2, 3 example, phone number 555 1, 2, 3, 4. john.doe@example.com. And maybe this is a work and this is an other. And so note, this is my note. And maybe next day ground delivery. All right, all those things are picked. And we can look at the dialog, and there we go. All that text, all the information that we filled in there is still there. If I hit cancel, I can return to here, maybe make a change to pickup, go back in here, and it will reflect that new information. Okay. Once I'm sure about all that information, I can just go ahead and hit OK. It'll take me back here. All right, so that's great. So the next thing we need to do is actually put in those date and time pickers for the delivery date and the delivery time. So to start that process off, first I need 2 icons. So under drawable, I'm going to say new vector asset. I'm going to look for the calendar. Looking for calendar today. I think that is the one I want. Yep, so calendar today. That's the image I'm looking for. And so I'm going to say this is IC calendar. Cool. Hit next. Finish. I'm also going to add another vector asset for the time. So in here, let's look for time. And I'm going to pull this one that says access time. Okay. And so I'm going to call that IC time. Cool. Next and finish. So now I have a calendar icon as well as a time icon. All right. So I'm going to use both of those in my layout. So going back over to layout, I'm going to go into content order, which is where we have all the different pieces that are going to appear. Now, when I pull this up, it seems that there may be a bit of an error there. In terms of, and it looks like it may be still building. Okay, there it goes away. Now it's fixed. So what I want to do is add some fields down to the bottom for the delivery date and the delivery time. So first I'm going to add in a text view. That will be a label for the delivery date. I will also add in a label for the delivery time. I'm going to add in some inputs. So I'm going to add in a date input for the date. And I'm going to add a time input for the time. And then finally, I'm going to add in some buttons, namely image buttons, because they're just going to have those icons for the date and time pickers. So I'm going to add this one. This is going to be IC calendar. And this image button is going to be IC time. Okay, so we have 2 image buttons in there. I just need to set up all the constraints. So I'm going to put in constraints here. Boop. And I need to change my default to 8 so that those all get set up with the proper margins, 8 and 8. I'm going to anchor this to here and there. I'm going to anchor this to be aligned and centered with the text box. So I'm going to anchor it to the top and bottom and anchor the left side to the left side there. Anchor the left side there, top and bottom. Anchor the text field to the bottom of the text view and the left side. Anchor this text view to the bottom of the other edit text and to the side. Now, it looks like this one did not get a margin of 8, so I need to go back in and fix that. Okay, 8, 8, 8, 0 and 0 on top. That's fine. Okay, yeah. So those are all lined up. So you can see that I've got a label, a field for the date, another label, a field for the time, and then buttons to bring up the time, date and time pickers. All right, so now in these fields, I'm going to say, okay, the label I probably want to change. So the label I want to change to delivery date. The time I want to say is delivery time. And in terms of the IDs, this would be the delivery date text refactor. This is the delivery time text. This will be the delivery date edit. This will be the delivery date button. This is delivery time edit and delivery time button. Okay, so now, well, I want that to be BTN because I called the other one BTN. Okay, so now that those are hooked up, I want to start putting some code in that responds to when you click the button, but also actually when you click the field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the code side of things, go down to where those all are, which should be at the bottom of the file. And so here we've got the delivery date and the delivery time. I do notice that when I put these in, I maybe didn't put them in the right order. So I might want to go back and fix that real quick before I go too far. So for instance, I'm going to move this down so that so that these are sort of in logical order with the screen. So I have the label, the field, and the button, the label, the field, and then the button. Okay, going back to the code, so the delivery date field, you'll notice I still need to extract the text, so I'm going to do that now. And so this is going to be delivery date text. And this is going to be delivery date or delivery time text. Okay, that's fixed. And what I want to do now is for the buttons and the edit text, I'm going to hook up on click listeners. So on the image button, the first one, delivery date, I'm going to say on click, and we're going to create a new method on delivery date. Okay. Now Alt Enter so we can create that event handler, and we're going to create that in the order activity. And going back to my layout, I'm going to add the very same method, the very same link to when you click on the edit text. Okay, so both of those are going to prompt the picker to appear. Next up, I'm going to do a similar thing for the time. So when you click on the button for the time, it's going to call on delivery time. Alt Enter, create on click event handler. We're going to create that in the order activity again. Okay, back to here. I'm going to hook up that same on click listener to the edit text. There we go. Okay, so now both the time field and the time button, both of those point to on delivery time. Both the two controls for the date point to on delivery date. So we'll use those to bring up a date picker and a time picker respectively, where the user can enter the appropriate date and time. So I need to create a date picker dialog. So I'm going to go date picker dialog is equal to new date picker dialog. Now, unlike the alert dialog, these do not include builder classes to build them, so I'm just going to use these here. Okay, this. Now, looking at the error message here, you may notice that it says that this call requires API level 24 or greater. As it turns out, if I look at the documentation, so on the date picker dialog class, there are 4 different constructors. As it turns out, some of these constructors were added later in kind of the history of Android. So for instance, these first two, one that just takes a context and one that takes a context plus a theme ID, both of those were not added until API 24, which because our minimum is API 21, I can't use either of those two constructors. So what I'm left with is these two constructors here, which take a lot more arguments. Okay, so the first one takes 5 arguments: a context, a listener for when the date is set, and the initial date, year, date, month, and time. Or this one for the theme. Now, if I look at the documentation here, I'll see that if I use 0, then it's just going to use the parent or the default theme, which is basically what happens if I call the first one. So I'm going to use the second one, and we'll just pass 0 because we don't need to change the theme or the appearance of the dialog. We'll have the same as the rest of the application. All right, so that means I need to pass a context. I need to pass 0 for the theme. I need to pass a listener. So I'm actually going to construct that up here. So date picker dialog dot on date set listener. So this is my listener is equal to new date picker dialog listener. All right, so I'm going to create that here. And so that's going to respond to when you pick an actual date. And that's going to actually update the fields. So I need that listener. I'm going to use that in here. And the only reason why I'm extracting that is just to reduce some of the nesting that occurs. I also need to specify the initial year, month, and day. Now, for an easy test right now, I could just set the current date and time information. So 2021, and well, no, the month would be 1 because the month is based on 0, if I remember right. Or no, the year is first. So I need the year, which is 2021. The month is 1. And then finally, the day of the month would be 17. So this gets kind of interesting in Android because Android has this history where January is actually month 0, which is why I'm specifying 1 as February, is because it starts at 0, it doesn't start at 1. So that's just one of those things you kind of have to watch, is the month is not base 1 as you would expect, it's actually base 0. All right, so I'm creating this dialog. And then finally here, I'm going to say dialog dot show. Okay, so that's going to make the dialog appear. Now, in the onDateSet listener, I do want to use the values that it returns. So what I probably want to do is go ahead and take the date and fit it back into the date field. But in order to set that up, I do need to have a reference to both the date and time fields, which I don't have yet. So I'm going to go in here, private, edit text, and I'm going to add some fields for the date and time. So date edit, edit text, time edit. Okay. Now I've added those 2 fields. I need to hook them up. I need to go grab the actual controls. So I'm going to go into onCreate, and we're going to say date edit is equal to find view by ID, r.id.delivery date edit, and the time edit will be find view by ID, r.id.delivery time edit. All right, so I have those 2 fields. Okay, now that I have that hooked up, I can go back to where we were. And so in the listener, when we get a date, I'm going to update that field. So dateEdit.setText. And so I want to set it to something that contains those values. And for an easy test, I might just do string concatenation. So 0 plus dash, or the year plus dash, plus another dash, or plus the month plus dash plus day. So that should give us a quick kind of ability to see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to go into the order screen. We're going to click on the button, and that's going to bring up this dialog here. All right, so we can see that it has pre-selected the 17th of February. You will notice if I maybe change this to month of year 2, thinking February, go back in here, you would see that loads it up with March, right? So we can see that there's definitely an offset of 1 there on the month. Okay, so going back in here, I am going to try and pick a date. And so let's say February 9th, and I'm going to hit OK. And so you'll see that the date has been updated to February 9th. Now, you might ask what happens if I hit cancel on that dialog. So if I hit cancel, it's going to go ahead and not update the date. So this handler only gets called when you press OK, which is good. You'll also notice if I say maybe let's select the 5th and then go back in here, you'll notice the 5th isn't selected by default. So I do need to fix things a little bit in terms of how I pick the initial default value. Now, oftentimes we'll initially pick that date as the current date is often the starting point. That's not always the best thing to start with, but usually it's the thing that we'll start with. So that's usually what I'm going to pass here is the current year, month, and day. But later on, once I have a value in there, I would really like it to pre-select that year, month, and day that's already been put into the field, right? So basically I need to do 2 things. I need to first of all figure out what the current date and time is, if there's nothing there, or if there is a value there already, I need to parse it. The other thing you'll notice here is we're not really doing a great job of formatting. So for instance, this should probably be 01 instead of 17, and this should probably be 0 padded as well for both the day and the month. So I do need to do a little bit of work to format the date as well as potentially parse the date. All right. So before we jump into that too much, I do want to explain a few things in terms of Android's history with dates and times. So Java, unfortunately, has a long history of different date and time APIs, which have been, in a lot of ways, half-baked and have had a lot of issues over the years. To the point that there's more than one API in Java to work with dates and times. So going back to the earliest days of Java, Java 1 and 2, back then we really just had 2 classes. You had the date class, which would store the current date and time, or you could store a custom date and time. That is strictly based off of the number of milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. Like, the date class is strictly a wrapper around that number. And so that existed, and they're also in Java 2, we got the simple date format class. So you could use that to parse and format dates. So that was the original pair of classes that we could use to work with dates. That's actually where the whole problem of month starting with 0 originated. It goes all the way back to this old API. That's why Java months start with 0, is because back in Java 1 they decided that was the case, and then Java's unfortunately stuck with that from there. Next up came in Java 5, we got kind of the combination of the calendar and string format working. Before that, calendar actually existed long before Java 5. Unfortunately, there wasn't really a good way to format it because simple date format only really knew how to work with date objects. So in order to be able to format calendars, we now got string format. So you can use string format to format dates and times. Unfortunately, in Java 5, we still didn't get a way to parse date and times. So you still had to go back to the original API and use that anytime you wanted to parse, because this would not let you, this would only let you format, not parse. And so that continued to be a problem and a pain point for many, many years. To the point that a lot of developers didn't use these APIs. A lot of professional developers went over to another library called Yoda Time, which eventually, or Java said, okay, we need to fix this problem. We need some better libraries. And so in Java 8, we finally got the Java Time package, which contains quite a few different classes to work with dates and times. So that includes things like the local date class, the local time class, the local date time class. All of these classes are great in terms of working with dates and times. And if you're looking at the documentation, you'll find that there's quite a few classes in this package. So all of those are tremendously helpful. Those are really the way that we should be working with dates and times anytime we can in terms of Java applications today. Those are hands down the best of the three through a lot of iteration. So issue is though, remember that we have kind of a synchronization problem between Java and Android, where the version of Java does not necessarily align with the version of Android. So both of these, this early version 1 of the API, the date and simple time, those have been around since Java 1 or 2. They've always been available in Android. Every Android app since API 1 can use those. Same way with the calendar and the string format. Those have existed from API 1 of Android. So you can use those classes freely. The problem is, this one being introduced in Java 8, it actually didn't even come available in Android until much, much later. So you can't even use the classes in Java Time until API 26, which poses a lot of problems because it means that you really have to write a lot of your apps against this older API, which really is something we'd like to avoid. So things that we can do, if we think about where our minimum is API 21. So with that, we still have to do some work with these older APIs, more than likely. If you want to support devices that are on API 21, you're still going to have to use the calendar API, for instance, and potentially simple date and format to parse dates and times. So you still have to work with those at least to some extent. The thing that you can do is you can kind of put in some logic to say, well, if it's API 26 or greater, then we can use this. Then we can start to use these functionality instead of the older Java functionality. So we can kind of bridge that gap. Unfortunately, that does mean in some cases it means writing double code if you're doing both of those things. All right. So given that, both the date and time pickers kind of expect you to be working on those with one of those first two versions of the API. So whether it be working with calendars or working with dates. So it is better to work with calendars wherever we can over dates. But, again, because simple date format doesn't really understand dates, we may have to, sometimes we have to bridge the gap and use dates anyway. So first thing I want to do is I want to say, let's pull in the current date and time rather than hard coding some numbers here, which is the current date and time. Okay, so I can get that. So the way that I get the current time using the calendar API is I'm going to say I'm going to have a calendar here. This is going to be date is equal to new or sorry, not new, it's calendar.getInstance. Okay, so calendar.getInstance will give us the current date and time. Okay, so I can pass that off to my function, and so I need to say, well, let's pull off the pieces one by one. So here I'm going to say date.get year. Oh, right. In order to get the year, I can't just call get year. I need to call get, and then inside of there, I'm going to pass a constant that is the particular field. So calendar dot year. Okay. I'm going to reformat this a little bit so it's easier to read. This 0 listener. All right, so we've got the date, and so we get that from calendar.get with the calendar.year constant, and then I'm going to say date.get, and again calendar.month, and so I'm going to do month in here. Date.get, and in here we're going to say calendar dot day of month. That's the one I want. So year, month, and day of month. All right. So now that we've built the dialog out, we've populated it with the current date in there. I can go ahead and try this. And, oh, nope, I want to go down here. And I can go down here. Okay, yeah. And so it's picked the current date, which is February 17th. Awesome. Okay, so next thing I want to do is potentially format that date that I pick. So here I can go kind of pick the 8th. I want to format that. All right, so in terms of how I'm going to work that out, I'm going to use string.format here. So string.format. And so what I want is 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. All right. So in here, I'm going to say string format. And the format string I'm going to use, all three of these are integers. So it's going to be %d. And I want that 0 padded, so 0, 4. And then I'm going to put a dash in. And then we want the next number. Actually, this needs to be a %, not a $sign. %d, that needs to be 0 padded for 2 digits, so 02. Dash %02d. All right, so I'm going to pass those values in there. So year, month, and day of month. Now, you'll remember that the month is 1 offset. So if I try to go in here and pick a day, yes, things will be 0 padded, but you'll notice the month comes in as 1 and not 2. So in terms of formatting here, I do actually need to add 1 to the month before as I format it. Okay, so that is there. And so I'm going to say, let's click on that. There we go. Okay, so now we've got 02 instead of 01. Awesome. All right, so you can click in there and get that. Next thing I want to do is hook up the time field. We do need to come back a little bit because I want to parse that and have it pick the date that you had selected previously. But let's get the time working next. So in terms of working with the time, it's very similar. So I'm going to do time picker dialog, or dialog dot on time set listener. So this is my listener object. And I'm going to say new on time set listener. Okay. And so just kind of like what we did with the other one, when I get a time, I'm going to say time edit dot set text, and I'm going to use string.format again. And so the format, again, we've kind of got numbers, we've got decimals. So I'm going to use %d for the hour and a colon to separate the two, %d for the minute. Again, I want these 0 padded, so I'm going to do 02, 02 to make sure that there's always 2 digits there. Okay. All right, so we're going to pass in hour of day and minute. Now you will notice that this is going to come in here as a 24-hour clock. That's okay. That's as it is. We can come back and maybe correct that. Here I want to calendar time. I want to get the current date and time as I did earlier. So calendar.getInstance, that gives me the current date and time. And then I need to make my dialog. So time picker dialog is equal to new time picker dialog. And just like the other one, this needs quite a few arguments. So I need to pass in the context. I need to pass in 0 for the theme. I need to pass in my listener. I also need to pass in the current hour and minute. So in here, I'm going to say time dot get. We want calendar dot time or hour of day. So that's going to give me a 24-hour clock. And then for the minute, it's going to be time dot get calendar dot minute. Okay, so that's going to give me the time, the minute. And the last flag is should we show the UI as a 24-hour view. So for the moment, I'm just going to hard code that in as true. So we'll show it up as 24 hours. Okay. And finally, now that I've created the dialog, I need to show the dialog. So dialog dot show. Okay. Let's try it out now. I'm going to click here. And so I notice, okay, 11:17, that makes sense. And so I could say maybe 6:05, like that. Okay, cool. And it populates in here, formatted correctly, and 0 padded. You will notice in that dialog, I can, for instance, pick later hours through this inner wheel. So 22:20, I could pick that there, and that would fill in as such. Okay, so that's great. I can change this over if I want to see what this looks like as a 12-hour view, which is how we kind of typically look at it in the US. And so let me go back down to the time. And so here, instead of the two kind of nested or embedded wheels, I've got a picker up here. I can go between AM and PM. So that's how you switch it with this functionality. So let's say I want to say 2 p.m. 2:35. Awesome. Okay, so go ahead and hit OK. And you can see that now comes in as 14:35. Okay, so I can switch it between the 24-hour mode and the 12-hour mode pretty easily there, but I'm going to have to do a little extra work if I want to format it as either AM or PM. So one of the ways to do this is to just kind of write the code in with a check. So if I know that it is 12 or greater is where we're in the second part of the day, 12 p.m., I could potentially say if the hour of the day is greater than or equal to 12, then I know that we are in PM. Otherwise, we are in AM. Okay. So in here, I can kind of use similar formatting for those two. So we'll say here I write AM, and here I'm going to write PM. Now, I also have to make sure for the PM hours that I subtract 12 to make sure that they start at the right point. And then in here, let's go ahead and take a look at what happens. So if I go to 11 a.m., okay, 11:20 a.m., that's fine. If I go, however, to 11 p.m., that comes in as 11:20 p.m. Now, the problem is that it doesn't handle noon and midnight correctly. So if I were to go to 12:20, hit OK, you see I get 0:20 a.m. Or if I go to 12:20 p.m., I also get 0:20 p.m. So we've got kind of a problem where if we're going to go to a 12-hour clock, we also have to deal with the fact that the 0 should be replaced with a 12. So I have to do some conversion there. Okay. So what can I do? What can I do there? I can kind of think about how I'm operating here. And so one way to write this out, I might say, well, if hour of day is equal to 0, then we're going to just say the hour of day is 12. That would be one quick way to fix it. Similarly up here, I could say if hour of day is equal to 12, then hour of day is actually 24. So let's try that real quick and see what happens. All right, so if I go to 12:22 a.m., all right, so that does come out as 12:22. If I go to 12:22 p.m., all right, awesome. That also comes out as that. And so basically here, I'm changing the 0 and saying, well, we'll display that as actually 12. Or in this case, if it's 12 or noon, display that as 24, which 24 minus 12 gives me 12. So putting in those two fixes gets it shifted so that the noon and the midnight numbers format correctly. Okay, so I can do that with kind of my math and figure out how to format that as I want to, using just the string format APIs. And so that's usually the easiest way to go about that. You can, if you want to, you can extract these format strings, which I would recommend. However, usually I want to say, well, let's maybe do this in a more standardized sort of formatting. Okay, so in order to use so the other APIs to say format or parse the date, which again I may need to actually parse the current date, I want to add in some additional logic. So I need a new simple date format object, and that is in the java.text package. So here we're going to call that our format, and that is equal to new simple date format, and I need to specify a pattern. So the way this works is we use letters to kind of represent what part of the date or time we're trying to show. So for instance, it would be Y for year, M for month, D for day, H for hour, M for minute. And then I may need some additional things. So often I find out that it's worth for me to kind of look up the documentation because there's a lot of little details about this that are easy to forget. So if I'm looking at the Java docs for the simple date format class, I can see what the different letters represent. And so I can see things like the idea that a lowercase y is different than an uppercase y. So an uppercase y is a week here, and a lowercase y is a year. And so those will actually give you different numbers. All right, so I'm going to use, here we're working right now with the time. I want to jump down here. So there is an uppercase H, which is the hour in the day, but that is a 24-hour basis from 0 to 23. Or there is a lowercase h, which is a 12-hour basis, which is 1 to 12. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use a 1 to 12 basis. All right. So going back to my code, I'll have that, and I'll also be using a lowercase m here for minute. You'll notice an uppercase m is month. So lowercase h, lowercase m, and finally for the Pm specifier, do we have? Yeah, there we are. So Pm is an A. All right. So my format, my pattern will look like so: HH colon MM A. So that's the way I want to format my dates. Okay. And so I'm going to use that to replace the logic that I've written here. Okay. So in terms of this, I want to say format dot format. Now you'll notice that format takes it takes a date object as an argument. So to use the format method, I need to provide it with a date object. So the way that I want to get that date object is actually want to go through the calendar to get there. So I'm going to actually take this line of code, move that up top so I can access that. And so in terms of the time, I'm first going to say, well, let's set the relevant fields. So we're going to set calendar dot hour of day. We're going to set that to the hour of day value that we received. We're going to take the time. We're going to set calendar dot minute to, again, the minute we received. And then from there, I can actually get a date object from the calendar object. So I'm going to say time dot get time, which ironically get time actually returns a date object, which has the same data that's in the calendar. So I can pass that into the formatter, and that will spit out a string, which I can finally pass all of that into time edit dot set text. So if I want to use the simple date format classes, that's kind of what I've got to go through, is a lot of different conversions, starting with the calendar, converting it down to a date to be formatted as a string. All right, so let's say I'm going to pick February 1st. Go ahead and click there. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. I want to go to the time. So let's say 11:35. Go ahead and click there. AM, that worked. Maybe 10:30 PM. Okay, that functioned as well. We can check the kind of edges just to make sure that we're good there. So I can use that format to kind of deal with a lot of that logic. Often you typically want to extract this as a string so that it can be changed based on what culture the user's in. So for here, I might change this to Alt Enter, extract string. Nope, that's not what I want to do. I want to extract this as a string resource. Oh, there we go. I had to just click in the right place. Extract string resource. The name of this would be time format. There we go. So that's going to replace that with a call to get string for the string resource. Okay, so we've got the time format. I can now also, one of the things I wanted to do is if you open the dialog, I want to potentially bring in the existing time. So I can do that up here. I can say if time edit dot get text dot length, if that length is greater than 0, then we're going to try and parse it. So here I would say format dot parse, and so we're going to parse the text that's in there, which would be time dot get text dot toString. And so that can return a date object. So date. This is what's been parsed. And so that will get me from there. And I do notice in there that the parse can throw a parse exception. So I do need to catch that. So I'm going to say try catch parse exception. EX. And I'm going to say, as far as this is concerned, I don't particularly care that if the data is formatted incorrectly, that's more a user problem. So I'm just going to ignore that error. I'm just not going to do anything with it because I'm just going to let it be, hey, if it didn't work, then we'll just use the current time. But if that did come through, it is the current time. What I want to do is then update the time according to the data that was parsed. So I would say in here, I would say time dot set, and kind of like we did down here, I want to set the hour of day and the minute. So I'm going to pull that out of the date object. So parsed dot get, and so we're going to get the get the hour. And here I'm going to say parsed dot get minutes. So this should give us the ability to read the current value and display it as the initial thing that gets selected. So if all that's worked out, I'm going to go into here, and in terms of the time, I'm going to go ahead and pick a time here. Let's say 11:36 p.m. Okay, that works. And then when I click in here, you see it's back to that same time. I can double check. 10:20 a.m. Okay, that works. And I click again, then the button is back here to 10:20. Cool. So I can use that to, I can use the simple date format to both parse as well as format the time. All right, so I'm going to do the same conversion. I'm going to do the same logic up in the date. So I'm going to move the date up. I'm going to create a simple date format object for that. It is worth noting that it may sometimes seem like you're reusing or creating a lot of instance of the simple date format class. It's worth noting that these objects are not meant to be reused or not meant to be used by multiple things. So it's not a good thing to try and save memory on not recreating them generally. You want to usually just have those separate. So let's think about the format that we want here. So for the year, it's going to be year, month, day is how I'm going to format it out. And so I want to say lowercase y, uppercase M, and you can see there's a uppercase D, which is day and year, or lowercase d, which is day and month. So that's what I'm going to use as the lowercase d. So it's going to be y dash uppercase M, D. All right, so that's my format. And so when I go into here, I want to use that format similar to how I did with the time. So when the user picks a date, I want to say date.set, and we're going to say set the calendar dot year, and that's going to be set to the value we received as the year. Date dot set calendar dot month. We're going to set that to the month we received. Now we don't need to add a plus or -1 here because it's automatically going to do the conversion when we pull it into when we do the formatting. So date dot set calendar dot day of year, or no, day of month, and so I'm going to put day of month there too as well. And then finally I can actually show that text, format it and show it. So we're going to say dateEdit.setText, and we're going to set that using the date object that we have there. So format, and this is going to be date.getTime. And as I mentioned previously, calling getTime on a calendar actually returns a date object, which is what this formatter needs. All right, so we can check this part to make sure that it's working correctly. So if I pick a date, it should show the correct date here. Okay. Now I do have the incorrect format. It's formatting the day as 4 digits. I want to format that as 2 digits, so I just need 2 Ds. So let's go ahead and do that here. February 1st. Okay, awesome. That worked out. And the last thing for me to do is to make sure that when I come back in here, it shows the date that I've previously picked. So I'm going to use the same sort of logic and say if there's a value there, then I want to use that. So if dateEdit dot getText dot length, if that's greater than 0, then there is a value there, and then we're going to try and parse that. So catch parse exception. And if we get that, we're not actually going to do anything with it because it's simply a user problem. Okay. Next thing in here, I want to actually try and parse it. So we're going to say date parsed is equal to format dot parse. And we're going to say in here what we want to parse is dateEdit dot get text dot toString. Okay, so it's going to try and parse that, and then assuming it works, that's where we're going to update the current date with the information that was parsed. So date dot set, and we're going to set that to calendar dot year. Actually, I can do this an easier way. I can just copy it over. So date dot set time and give it the parsed date object. This wasn't really an option when I was working with the time. I did need to pull those two pieces individually, but when I'm parsing a date, I can actually just directly take the entire date object and put it in there. So going down to date, I'm going to say let's pick February 1st. Okay, cool. If I come back in here, February 1st is still selected. I can double check that. February 3rd is still selected. So that's the kind of code that I need to have in there to work with dates and times, is to, parse the dates, format the dates, and the way I'm doing that, as you can see, is using this simple date format class. Just a reminder, once you get done with this, you want to make sure that you extract that string. So here I'm going to hit Alt-Enter and extract this resource as the date format. And so that's really all to talk about for this lecture. I'll discuss with you later. Awesome. Thank you.